Hi, everyone. This is Melissa with, or Good Morning, Oregon. This is the first edition of Monday Morning Momentum with Kuko Media. And today I'm really excited. Have a long history with these gentlemen, especially the association that they work with. Their wisdoms, their wisdoms. They're wizards of wisdom.
That's a new word you just made up. I love it.
I just made up words today. Anyway, my name is Melissa Cundy. I'm the founder of Kuko Media and a curator of momentum makers and digital marketing builders. And what I want to do is to give you a little bit of story. I think it was about over 12 years ago. I had just taken the helm of the Portland Area Radio Council. And they said, hey, we're going to do this big event. And this amazing guy is going to come and give us a talk about how to market, how to do it well, and how to really viscerally connect to your local audiences. And I never met the guy before. So I just picked him up at the airport and landed him at the Mac Club. And there was 200 people there, marketers, business people. And he spoke for about an hour and a half. And his name was Roy H. Williams. This guy was brilliant. He had everybody riveted and on their chairs because what was he doing? He was dropping reality bombs. He was dropping human connection information that a lot of people in marketing forget. It's all about the human connection. Well, in that time frame, I met some people that he's been working with from the beginning, and they are just as amazing and just as talented. And we're going to be doing an event on July 18th. And so without further rambling from me, I would like to introduce you to Johnny Moulton and Chris Maddock. So guys, since I don't like to drone people on with a lot of chit chatter before we get to hot nuggets, why don't we start with you, Chris? Introduce yourself, give us a hot nugget for marketing, and tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, I remember that event well, maybe weller than you, because as I was telling Johnny, I think it was more like 20 years ago. But not to date either of us. I'm not trying to date either of us. But as I was telling Johnny the other day, that was the very moment that Roy forcibly got me on stage. In fact, that was the very morning he actually, as he writes in his first book, Wizard of Ads. He wrote a thing famously called the 12 most common mistakes in advertising. And he actually wrote that at breakfast, and an early morning Roy breakfast, which is early. We're talking 5:30 a.m. And I'm barely a writer, an intern sort of / whatever guy. And he jotted it down on a napkin, and he goes, Chris, you know what? There were more than 200 people in that room. At least in my memory, there were about 15,000. I think there was somewhere between 200 and 15,000. And he goes, Chris, I think you better take this one. I'm going, well, Roy, I've never taken anything before. I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, yeah, I think you should go in front of these people at the port. Wasn't it the Museum of Art, I think?
Yeah, it was in the Portland Museum. Well, we had two actually. One was at the Portland Museum, and one was at the Mac Club. And so we did both.
Okay,
but you were there.
Yeah, in my mind, it was amazing space and an incredibly thing. I was out of body anyway as I gave the 12 most common mistakes in advertising. And as I was giving it, watching myself out of body, I realized how wise Roy was, and I was watching the people and their reactions out in the crowd, and it was an amazing time. And we talk about those truisms and those nuggets, and one of them we were talking about yesterday. Roy says it was his quote that, as a matter of fact, the American people do not hate advertising, and that's absolutely true. And it's something I've been relating to people all the time, and I teach mainly writing and creating campaigns as opposed to ads. And that's what I try to focus in on. And when I'm there in Portland on the 18th of July, that's what I'm particularly going to be honing in on is creating campaigns as opposed to ads. And if you think about the ads that we remember and socially remember, the Campbell soup ads, but my father definitely remembers the Miller Lite tastes great, less filling ads.
Yeah.
Campaigns that you remember. You don't remember individual ads, you remember campaigns, and I'm going to show people how to produce those. And the key is to try to keep yourself from being too creative. You don't have to produce these wonderful independent units of beauty every time. In fact, what you need to do is figure out something to say that sticks with people. And then the really hard part is to take your hands off of that. Try to do the same thing over and over and over again. In fact, the only study that's ever been done on advertising of any purport was done by Harvard. Roy tells us the details of this a little bit better, but what they figured out over a 10-year study is if you can figure out what to say, once you've done that, the important thing is to figure out how to say it again and then say it again, figure out another way to say it again and say it again. Mm-hmm. The only people that end up doing well in advertising are those people that try to reinvent their beautiful little piece. That's where you get it wrong. And that's where you become unforgettable and unmemorable and become forgettable. So if you think about it, Geico, it's really the same damn commercial every time. Basically the same commercial. Even the ones that who's the actor?
Hold on. I got my neighbor coming in on the live broadcast. Holy crap.
We love the neighbor. We love the neighbor.
What marketing tips does he have for us today?
Yeah,
we got airlines, we got neighbors, we got everything.
But the whole idea is to keep it consistent and with a little bit of that. Yeah, with the neighbor coming in. That's essentially what
an interruption break right there.
Chris is absolutely right. I mean, it has to have a little.
I'm never going to forget that.
That's really it, though. It's to say the same thing, look the same way, feel the same way. Because why do people? To go back to Roy's point, why do people love the familiar, and they love ads that they can be familiar with. In fact, it's those little bits. And I relate this to Seinfeld in some of my classes, and. In most every episode, Elaine hits Jerry and goes, "Come on!" And then Kramer comes to the door all wackily every time, but he does it in a different way. So it's familiar, but with a little bit of a sprinkle of magic on top.
Well, I think anybody who's lived here in Oregon remembers some really good ads. And the one that I remember, and I'm going to kill it right now because I don't have the original, was Rainier Beer. That thing played and it was awesome. And if you say it today for people who've lived here for a long time, they'll immediately remember everything. It's ingrained into our emotional system. And when they played that campaign, I mean, it's still working today because I remember it. So
what's
that's
the name of the beer?
Rainier Beer.
Oh, Rainier Beer. Oh, yeah, I love that stuff. Yeah.
What's the name of it?
No, I didn't know what you were saying when you were singing the song. But yeah, that's cool.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and a little nugget up front and anything else you want to share.
Yeah, same kind of thing. I mean, I think shortly after that, Roy came in and visited a company that I was working with called Midwest Family Broadcasting, and again gave that similar speech. And those 12 most common mistakes, and you can still find them online, are incredibly valuable to businesses. We've done it's been an important guide in how we make ads. But to echo Chris's point. It's not about finding that one big idea, but can you find an idea that lasts, one that's long? Don't think huge, but think one that can extend, and that's what makes all the difference. You started out with the quote from Roy saying people don't hate advertising, and I would even go back a few decades earlier than that when Howard Gossage said people don't read ads, they read what interests them, and sometimes it's an ad. That one little tidbit has been something that's stuck with me so long. It's like it's got to still be something that's compelling and interesting to lean into and hear and read or click on or engage on. Otherwise, it's just a boilerplate of information, and information is for suckers. It's not going to get you very far. But a good emotional story, a good interesting turn of words, that's gold right there.
Really love what Roy says. What's the tagline? Turning words into magic,
and dreamers into millionaires,
and dreamers into millionaires. And it doesn't matter if you're doing print, if you're doing radio, if you're doing Facebook ads, a lot of people underestimate how powerful words can be. And the other thing that they underestimate is really knowing your audience, like really knowing what they need and how your product can transform them or give them an experience that they want. So Johnny, do you have anything to like any ads maybe you've done before you want to share?
Yeah, let me play something for you here that I like, that I wrote years ago, and I like it for a number of reasons. Just because it does have that quality of being a bit odd. It doesn't sound like something that should be on the radio, but I think the message is important too. This is for a bank.
Looks like there used to be a branch there. What do you suppose happened to it? A storm? Perhaps it just wasn't getting the nutrients it needed. Maybe some kid climbed on it decades ago and snapped it before it could build up strength. That would have had to have been back in the 50s. Look how high that stump is now. The good news is you've got a lot of time to sit and look at that tree. You can wonder any number of things. For as long as you own this house, that is your tree. It's in your backyard. It's making shade over your lawn chair. Want a tree for yourself? Talk to Town and Country Bank. Town and Country Bank. Out of reach. Isn't so out of reach anymore. Member FDIC, equal housing.
So what's happening there? The point of that ad is it answers the question of what are you really buying? You go to a bank not to get a mortgage. You're not even going to the bank necessarily to get a house, but you're going to the bank to get what the house can do for you. And in that particular ad, it's all about what that house and specifically what it's like just sitting in the backyard looking at a tree, and what that feels like, because really that's ultimately what people are really buying. They're not going there for the mortgage. They're not going there for the great experience. They're not going there because everybody has ties and they have friendly service. They're going there because I want that house. I want that experience with that tree. And that's all that ad's about.
Yeah. And if I was to bring that back to the point that Roy makes all the time, and that I try to continue about creating campaigns, it's really how often you can follow that ad up, because most likely, as Johnny knows this really well, we've worked on a lot of campaigns like this together. Not that many people are in the market for that product right now. A very small percentage of the people that hear that on the radio or read that where they read it are in the market for a home right now. So that ad is, no matter how great it is, we both know that that's of only marginal importance if you can't follow that up over time, over a number of years, and still feel familiar. And that campaign obviously feels so good. That ad feels so good. But if you can't do that over time, if you can't keep your hands off of it and come up with something new and something completely different, then that's a problem. So you need to be able to have that same feeling, that same voice, that same. Did you hear how that ad started with not silence, but actual crickets? It started with crickets, which was cool. Before I don't know how long ago that was made. I bet you it was made before people said crickets when you heard nothing. But that's really weird. It started with crickets, and a lot of radio stations in Pandora will not let you have that much near silence at the beginning of an ad, because they say it. I think it works too well. Yeah. But it makes people maybe turn away. You have to be patient enough, and only a person maybe in the housing market is going to be that patient. But the product cycle is what we're talking about there. We talk a lot about that in classes, but the product cycle is so long there that you need to be able to have the same voice, the same feel, the same magic go on for enough time that somebody at the rest of the 99% of the people will fall into that market. But something else we talk about. That's just a beautiful ad. Did you voice that, Johnny?
That is not my voice. The great Stu Bowers voiced that.
I was going to say that'd be a stretch for you to get even that.
It is, yeah. But
pretty awesome stuff.
It was in a series of about 12 ads, and they all the whole theme was, if you think owning a house or if you think getting that loan is out of reach, it might not be quite that out of reach. And yeah, we didn't expect anyone to come busting out of the door that day, but when that need finally arose and said, you know what, I at least need to give them a shot because they have been talking to me and being my friend for the past year. I now trust them, and that's huge. That's a huge thing.
Did they what do they do now? Do you know what did they change that ad campaign?
As is so unfortunate that happens. Yeah. New people come in, new boards come in, new committees come in, and
that's what we're talking about.
And it kills it. Yeah.
Right
kills
there.
it.
That right there is such a good. That's such a good ad within a great campaign that if that had been around for five or so years, that would be a classic, and it probably would have spread throughout a far greater reach than just that area. Right. Those campaigns that we remember that become familiar to Americans, that's just as good. This is just as good as any of those. It's the people that put their hands on it that sort of neutralize that. So that's a really big part of the magic that makes people love campaigns is all that stuff, and then being able to hold off changing it. That too.
Okay. So we promised to keep this at 15 minutes. So
that's 15 minutes. Good Lord.
we're at 15:59. So as close.
Where's your neighbor? On him to the show.
Bring him back. Dancing through. We barely saw him.
So I think it might be really good to talk about maybe some ideas of product cycles and consistency in our next conversation, and kind of what you guys are great radio guys, and I think there's this idea that radio's dead and or traditional media is dead and the digital is the only way to go. And I'm a digital marketing specialist, and I think there's this really nice way you can intermingle radio and traditional with digital, and use that product cycle to become rememberable in your local market. And I think we can talk about that next time. Does that sound good, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
all right.
I've got some good stuff on that.
Until next Monday for Monday Morning Momentum, this is Melissa Cundy with Kuko Media. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, cheers. Bye, guys.